Anchors away, an opportunity for our anchors here at KARK to step away from our normal, I guess you could say, surroundings, for our confines of a newscast, to kind of discuss some of the topics in the news and some other topics that we happen to be talking about. Thanks very much for joining us. Joining us again this week, Ashley Ketz, my partner in crime each night, Mallory Harden, anchors our 4 o'clock show, and Chief Meteorologist Keith Monahan, who is all around.
He does all the shows.
He's everywhere.
Guy. We're going to talk about some things that have turned up. One thing that I want to touch on, because I think it hits every parent at home. A 5-year-old boy lost his life earlier this week or over the weekend after coming across a gun in his home, and it was a very tragic situation, guys. And I think we all agree that a lot of empathy goes out to these parents. It's one of those things where it simply is just horrific from beginning to end. But that comes to the question of gun safety, and where do you draw the line? Where do you start the line? Keith, and this is something we talk about.
I mean, you start the line, if you have a weapon in the house, it doesn't matter really. Well, I mean, there is a limit to how young they should be to be exposed to it. But I know, at least for my daughter, our daughter, she knows what weapons are. She's handled them. She knows their safety procedures to them, and she knows they're not toys. And I think that's the problem, is trying to keep kids away from guns because they're dangerous, I think makes them more dangerous. I mean, not exposing them to it. I don't mean they should be playing with them, but they should be exposed to it, know the safety features of it, and know that they're not to be messed with.
I think what's interesting too, I saw years ago a story that was done where a reporter put a bunch of toys in a small basket with a couple of guns in there. They didn't work, but they were actual weapons. And it was a preschool, and they put them in the middle of the floor. And these kids, especially the boys, they were drawn right to the guns. I mean, there's some fascination either about the physicality of the gun or the, but it was one of those things where they're going to get to it. And then you think of, gun locks and things like that. And you should have these things locked up, or you should have the physical locks that go through the weapons that make them impossible to fire. And then the argument on that too is like, well, then they're no good if I need one, if I need to get to it right away. Right. But I think a law enforcement will probably tell you, if you go through enough training, and you should train as much as you possibly can, you can get that gun unlocked and ready to do whatever you need to do. But and you can't lay blame a situation like that. But guys, what do you think? I'm not sure if your husbands or you guys are gun owners, or if you've ever thought about it. For safety.
Tough subject. You hear that story, and I read the report that was here. The 5-year-old boy, some of his siblings were home. They saw that happen. They were a part of it, and I just can't imagine. I just can't imagine what they went through. A sweet parents that lost their baby boy. It's so sad. 5-year-old child. But they are. You're right. That kids are fascinated by this. I can't say that I have the solution, but it just breaks my heart.
And that's something that we've tried to do as a as a group with the community, is find solutions to some of this violence that's happening, and even with these unintended victims. And one thing that we've been doing is our boss will send a gun lock to you. No questions asked. If you just email him, send him a message on Twitter, his name's Austin Kellerman, he will mail it to you. And it's just something, it may not be the solution, but it is something that, if you're interested, you have a gun at home, it's something that we can give to you free of charge.
I think the big thing is teaching kids respect for the weapon. That's the key.
I know that I tell my daughter, because I'm a gun owner, and I say, if you see a gun in the house, you tell me. If it's at a place, of course, tell your mom and dad. And if you're out someplace, you come across a gun, or a friend picks up a gun in another home, get out of the room. Just leave and find an adult and tell them. And I've at being a gun owner, I've come to work sometimes, and I'm thinking, did I put that up in a safe place when I left the house, knowing that she'll be there before I get home? And then you kind of go through this, like, did I leave the iron on, that kind of thing. And you sit there and you stew about it, and then I've gotten out of a meeting and I've driven home to find out that it's actually where it should be, but just because that thing isn't there. And of course, you can contact the sheriff's department. They can get you gun locks. But just try to be as as informative to your kids, if that's what you'd like to do. But do everything you can to be as safe as possible. And of course, thoughts and prayers go to that family. Terrible tragedy there.
Can't imagine.
On the other side, here's a tragedy, but Ashley Ketz, not a tragedy, won an Emmy Award for your story on the Elaine Massacre, which is a stain in the state's history. Tell us about that.
And it was for the history and the cultural category. So this was a story that I didn't know about growing up in Arkansas. Mallory, do you remember hearing about it?
No, the
Elaine Massacre.
The first I ever heard was the story that you did, and I know you poured your heart into this story.
Well, there was a lot of research that a lot of folks are doing on the topic that I had to dig into.
Kind of give us a Reader's Digest of it, because
it was back in 1919. World War I had just ended, and the price of cotton was going up, and the the black sharecroppers wanted to form a union because they felt like they weren't being paid fairly. So they were meeting in a church in Elaine, Arkansas. That's in Phillips County. It's a very rural part of the state. And at some point, gunfire erupted. Some people say the whites started shooting, some people say the blacks started shooting. Either way, what we know is that people were killed, and the estimates go from anywhere from 22 African Americans died to hundreds, upwards of 500. Wow. And to this day,
how come it's so
we
tough
still
to
don't
get
even
a number
know
on that?
because we don't know where the bodies are, and that there could be a mass grave. That's what some historians think, but we still do not know. Even the family members, the descendants that we know of who lost their great uncles in this, they still don't know where they took the bodies. Wow. They have death certificates, but they don't know where they were buried, if they were dumped somewhere.
With something like this, and I know stories are fascinating, but sometimes it's tough to get people to talk about stuff like this when you get back into their community.
Exactly, and even when you pull up in town now, you kind of get this sense of something happened here and people do not want to talk about it. They don't want you talking about it. So they would rather just, not talk about it. And a lot of people that even live there now don't know about it. And that's the kind of the sad part is, wow. They're living there, especially the children. Even some of their grandparents, they didn't talk about it for years because they were so fearful. But now there's some work being done. There are some groups that are trying to come together and make a memorial for the victims. Again, we don't know how many, but make some type of memorial that would be in Phillips County, and it would be unveiled at the Centennial, which is next year. So that's something that
100 years
we're going to be
this, and
following.
it's still tough to get people to talk about.
Isn't that, yeah.
Yeah. And
there's some great people doing great work. UALR, one of the professors there at the Race and Ethnicity Center, he is doing a lot of research, and he actually is going to have some announcements coming up here in the next few weeks, maybe months. So we're going to learn more. This story
is coming to light.
Is not done yet.
Honored for your work for actually, outlining this story and bringing it to
I think it's
attention.
important, as painful as our history could be, it's important that we know about it.
Oh yeah.
For better or for worse. The key is to educate folks that these things did happen, and not to celebrate them, but to have a remembrance of them.
Right.
And just to bring this topic up too, when we went through a phase about a year ago when statues were being torn down, and there was a lot of emotionally sensitive things like that were happening. And we had this discussion too, these things, whether they go in a museum or not, they shouldn't be torn down, destroyed, or forgotten. They should be used as teaching tools. Right. That this is something from the past, and now we're going to talk to our kids about how we're not going to revisit this.
Right.
Exactly.
No, exactly. I mean,
I know I keep looking at Keith because I know you're about to.
No, I think the bottom line is attitudes change over time, and what was thought to be okay 100 or 200 years ago, people's values have changed. So we shouldn't crucify the folks that lived during that time per se, because attitudes have changed since then.
Right.
That would be like holding you responsible for a decision you made when you were 12.
Or that my ancestors made.
Or that your ancestors made.
Right.
But on the other hand, we have
and that doesn't say, hey, it was okay for them to do it. I mean, we've learned that, things are done in the past.
But there's lots of talks
wrong.
of, the founding fathers owned slaves, and but it was you have to kind of put that in perspective of that time period. That wasn't abnormal. Not that it was right, but it wasn't an abnormal thing. I mean, thankfully we've matured as a society. We fought a civil war over it. I mean, the greatest loss of military life in all wars put together don't equal the loss of life during the Civil War. Yeah. And we fought that for a very noble reason, and that was to end slavery and to give equal rights to everyone. Finally, for the Constitution to mature into what it was set out to mean, that all men are created equal. We still have struggles. There's still people that are well, I'll say it, people that are racist out there. People have their preconceived notions about other folks, but the key is to kind of break from that and accept folks for who they are. You don't judge a book by its cover, kind of thing.
Exactly. Another thing I want to talk about, Mallory actually got an Emmy. Mallory got a baby recently.
Got a baby.
Way better.
Again to that.
Award.
That's something we're talking about. And you're kind of dealing with something that a lot of new moms deal with. And you
Sleep.
Sleep.
Sleep is one of them.
One.
Well,
Sleep.
you know,
What is
I
that?
tell you what, I remember after Karsten was born, and I went to the doctor for a checkup, and I said, "Gee, I'm always tired." He's like, "Well, you're working, and you're a new father, so get used to it.
It
doesn't change."
kind of
But you've got something else dealing with that all new
So
moms
we were
deal with.
talking about this earlier. This was probably something that many years ago I'd be embarrassed to talk about. But now I'm like, I have no shame. I know that
Well,
moms
you're a mom.
out there
You
are
create
dealing
your own
with
people now, so you've got the power.
Exactly. I need this like mom group around me. It's really hard, and it is the greatest, best thing in the world. This baby boy, y'all, oh, has my whole heart. But I've talked about, I had to come back to work when he was 5 weeks old, and as much as I love, and I'm so thankful to be here, I was a mess when I came back to work. I think as all moms are. I think we all are a little bit of a mess whenever we come back. And leave our babies at home, but that's
It's harder
part
the
of
second
it.
time.
It's harder the
I
second
think.
time. I don't know why it is, but I thought, I've done this before. I can get through it, but it was tough. And one thing that I've kind of talked to y'all about lately is, and it seems really silly, but I cannot lose my second baby weight. And with the first one, with Grace Ann, who's now 4, it was easier. It's always hard. But with the second one, it just won't come off, and I promise I've done everything in the book.
Oh,
but
stop.
I just,
You look great.
you're so sweet.
You
You're
do.
sweetest friend.
My
I
daughter's
adore
19.
her, by
I
the way.
still have that baby
I
weight.
still right. exactly.
Hang on to it.
I don't know what it is. I mean, I had
It's
sympathetic weight gain. It's
like battle
when my
scars.
wife was carrying our daughter, and it's the way it
that
goes.
makes me feel better. So sweet.
That's
but
right. Dads do.
They do. Sympathetic. Exactly. Well, and my husband actually lost weight. He said, "You ate all my
Oh
food."
my gosh.
That's when I was
Not the
pregnant.
right
Yeah,
answer,
no,
but-
no, I love him. He's the best. But I just joined Weight Watchers. So I was telling Ashley, I've done everything, and I finally found, last week I joined Weight Watchers. One of our producers here encouraged me to do it. I feel like I finally found what is going to work, I hope.
Is
Get
it fun?
23 points a day.
Well,
and I
nothing's
count my
fun. Let's
points.
be real.
It's more fun than anything else. I've
Okay.
done the thing where you cut out essentially everything that you eat, and it's just so miserable.
That's generally when I have to lose a couple of pounds, I just cut out. I stop
Everything.
eating for like
yeah.
a week.
Caffeine.
And drink water and coffee.
All the good stuff.
Oh, it's so, yeah.
So you just started.
I just started
Okay.
a few days ago. There's a little app.
And there are some good recipes on there
good
too.
recipes, and you don't feel
looks good.
deprived. It's just that you have to, if you're going to get pizza, you have to be really, really good the rest of the day. So you still get to enjoy things just in smaller portions, and I think this is going to work.
Especially
and
being busy and
being busy, working, being a working
kids
mama.
to chase.
It's hard,
Yeah.
but I love what I do. But coming home to him is just the best of my little girl. So, you know what? I'll probably
That's it.
always carry a
You
little
can-
bit extra from him, but hopefully Weight Watchers will just help with the extra.
Well,
But I have no shame
he's a little,
talking
he's a
about
little
it.
fella. Don't worry. When he starts running around, you chase him all over
That's
the
true.
place.
Goodness.
You'll lose the rest.
Sweet baby boy, y'all. He's so cute.
he is a
cute.
doll.
He's cute.
cute.
Guys, thank you very much for joining us, and thank you very much for joining us for this edition of Anchors Away. We certainly hope you enjoyed this, and certainly want to invite you to give us some constructive criticism. Let us know some of the things that you'd like to hear us talk about. We'd be more than happy to accommodate. See you next time.
Constructive.